Dobrodošli and welcome back. This week I've decided I'm going to take drastic action in the garden, and I think it's time for my Tuscan kale to come out.
Bok, I'm Mandio. This is Grow, Make, Cook, and welcome to my garden. I grew up in Australia in a permaculture family, but after we got married, Mr. O and I moved here to his home country of Croatia. I am a passionate and hands-on homemaker and gardener, and I love life's simple pleasures. So join me on my journey, and together we can learn to grow, make, and cook.
This week I had lots of plans. Unfortunately, my experiment to try and stop the voles from eating my vegetables is taking longer to make than expected. So, this is the beginning of June, or Lipan, and all I have done is make some compost and start my experiment to combat the voles.
While this Tuscan kale was lovely while it lasted, it's now completely gone over into seed, and I don't actually need 1, 2, 3, 4 plus about 4 others over in the other garden bed. I don't need 9 plants worth of seed. I'm never going to sow that much. So I think it's time to pull these up. And put them on the compost. Now that the kale is all out of this bed, I'm going to use it as the control for my experiment. So, what I'm planning to do is to dig out my bed with my broad beans completely, dig it up, and inspired by hugelkultur, I'm going to put logs and lots of big heavy wood at the bottom. And this one, I'm just going to dig over really thoroughly and add some compost too, so that I'm doing all of the other steps to this part of this bed, which has also had some voles and digging in it. So that way I'll be able to test whether it's the putting the logs at the bottom, which helps to control it, or whether it's just the regular digging and turning over the soil. So this half of this bed is just going to be dug, turned over and popped some compost in. And then my broad beans, we're going to, well, my one broad bean, we're going to pull out, dig everything out of that bed, pull all the soil out, put some logs at the bottom, and then hopefully the voles won't be able to get through. It often really surprises me how few people here have compost heaps. And composting is really easy, and I think the heart and soul of my garden. All I do is take everything from the garden that I don't want or need anymore, chop it up a little bit, break it up, snap it up, however you can get it into smaller pieces, and then chuck it on a heap. Now, it's a very good thing that I make my own compost here, because with the big project that I've got planned for this week, I'm going to need a lot of compost. So if I was buying this in bags, I would need dozens. But because last year I started making this heap, I'm hoping I'm going to have enough. Now, what I need to do is turn it, which means take off all of this top stuff and put it into the next bay, so that then I can get at the good stuff which is in the middle. I'm then going to sift it using this very funny looking contraption, which fits nicely onto my wheelbarrow, in order to have some good fine compost to dress my garden beds with. So let's get started. So an awful lot of sticks in the top of this. So when I'm turning a compost heap, often I will have a can of water with me. And this is just to douse this a little bit as I go, which will help to speed up the decomposition. Decomposing all that sticky, woody, organic matter. I clearly didn't put enough green or wet material like cut grass or food clippings, garden clippings, food scraps from the kitchen. I probably didn't put quite enough in this heap when I was making it. Now that it's starting to get difficult to pick up with the fork, it's time to move over to the spade. That means we can pick up some of this, which is now smaller in the compost, pop it through the sieve and get some compost out. Some really nice, fine, you'll see. And then the result is this, and it's beautiful. Couldn't find better stuff than that in a bag, and it smells like a forest floor. It's light, it's full of organic material, and best of all, it's got no peat, no nasty chemicals. It's all 100% organic and 100% from my garden. This is not a job that is going to be done quickly. This is a job that is going to take me months. But I'll keep plodding away at it, and I think I'm going to need a few barrow loads for this job I've got planned, but I don't think I'm actually going to get started until tomorrow. I might try and get a couple more barrow loads of compost sieved today, and we'll start on the big bits tomorrow. The peas have really come into their own. They're just spectacular and dense and falling over because of all of the wind, but that doesn't stop my peas being delicious. So, whilst the voles have left my last broad bean plant alone, the slugs have not. As you can see by all that silvery muck all over everything, and they've eaten all of the actual beans out of the pods. So I think serious action needs to be taken. I think I'm going to sacrifice my potato plant and just dig everything up. We'll try and sort this problem out. So there are a couple of things I'm going to try and save from this garden bed, and this is one of them. It's blitva, or Swiss chard, or silver beet, depending on where you're from. It's got a great big root. It's in the same family as beetroot, and it really doesn't like being dug up and disturbed, but everything's coming out, so we'll give him a second chance and see if he survives down in the other bed. Probably really down here is not actually a very good place for him in the wilder, still very much under construction part of the garden. But it'll be better here than back in the garden bed, considering what I'm about to do to it. I'm going to give this guy a really good soak once I've got him in, and probably mulch around him in the next day or so, just to really try and minimize the damage of moving him when he's already established. Another thing that I should be able to save from this garden bed are these chives. Now they're perennial, herbaceous perennials, which means they'll come back year on year. And so I want to treat those quite gently as well. And this is really not an optimal spot for the chives either, but this is a saving job. This is about just trying to rescue these plants from, well, fate worse than death, really. The last thing that I am going to pull out of this garden are my carrots, and they are tiny and immature, and I'm actually going to put the whole thing into soup. So when they're grown organically like these are, you can eat the carrot greens. So the whole thing will just go to the kitchen, and hopefully we'll make a little bit of food. Now that the bed is completely empty of anything that is even remotely like a plant, now comes the digging out all the soil. Who tells you that gardening is light work is probably lying. I have been digging this now for a couple of days, and well, when you've got a garden like this, who needs the gym? Next step is just to rake this flat a little bit, just so I've got a nice solid base to put my logs on. So now what I'm doing is just like in hugelkultur, where they have one really big log that goes in the bottom of the garden bed. Now I'm layering medium-sized logs, the ones that I've got, in the bottom. And then we're going to cover it with the compost. The idea though here is to cover the entire bottom of the bed with these thick bits of wood. I've got my logs all in, and now I'm just going to give them a quick douse with some water. This will help them decompose just a little bit faster. It also means that we get the normal benefits of a normal hugelkultur bed. The next thing I've got is some half-made compost. This is exactly the same stuff that I was sifting the other day. So this is just before it's sifted. And I'm going to chuck probably 2 barrow loads, which is about 100 litres, so 10 regular small bags of bought compost on top of those logs. So I got all of my half-made compost in, but it's the end of the day and the end of the week, and so I think my battle with the voles is going to have to continue next week, because there's still an awful lot of soil to get back in here. So that's the end for this week. If you like what we're doing, hit like. So that it's easy to come back, hit subscribe, and if you want notifications, use the bell icon below. I guess this is me saying until next week, do widzenia.